So I'm just getting back from San Antonio, where we got together 300 youth that are incoming freshmen. And they were able to, for a week-long leadership training, and they were able to take on certain challenges, including digital equity was one of the things they chose in terms of trying to figure out solutions for. So this is a priority, not just for all of us here in Washington, D.C., but these students are from all 50 states. That includes Alaska, Hawaii, and plus the territories like Puerto Rico and the territory of Washington, D.C., where we are right now. But I'm very proud to be here. I've been on this board from the beginning, pretty much, and I love that Brent's here and other board members here. And I was just texting with Ramiro Cavazos. He sends his love, but he's got an amazing event going on right now in Kansas City. But we focus on the workforce, so that's why the next panel is going to be so interesting for me, and especially because it's got all my friends on it. But we work on workforce development, education, culture, and social impact. So everything from teaching 100,000 youth how to computer code, and we also have digital skills that we're doing with AT&T. I think my friend is in here, Celeste. And I see other friends, Laura is here as well, that we're working on making sure that everyone has access to technology. And I saw a commercial from T-Mobile, and Joanna's here. So we're very proud to work with all these different groups. And I see Alejandro's here from the FCC, who's another partner of ours, and we're part of the supporting the FCC's efforts in terms of making sure there's equity and access. But we also developed the first Latino-themed Minecraft game. 30 million kids played it in 30 different languages. But none of these things are possible if they can't be connected. And so this is a very important conference, and I'm very proud to be here. So I now want to introduce the next panel, Preparing Latinos for the Economy of Tomorrow and New Challenges, Emerging Technologies, and a Tech Workforce. And this is really critical because a lot of times I go to conferences on economic development and they don't seem to talk about workforce development. And I'm glad to see Aspen is here, my friend Diego, who's going to be moderating, because it gets left out of a lot of conversations. And what's a better way to end generational poverty and stir economic growth than being able to be part of the workforce that we need to go forward. He will be joined by another friend, Jimena Gates Hartstock, who's a big source of inspiration since the moment I met her, CEO and co-founder of Build Within. My friend Sid Wilson, President and CEO of Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility, or ACER, and Clarissa Ramon, my partner and good friend, External Partnership Lead, Civil Rights for Google. So let's give them a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Diego Deliro Snyder. I'm the Managing Director of the Aspen Institute Latinos and Society. The Aspen Institute is a nonprofit organization headquartered here in DC that has several different policy programs. One of them is the Latinos and Society program in particular that focuses on advancing economic mobility for Latinos in the US. And since I joined the Institute 3 years ago, to us, Latino digital success has been top of mind, a great focus area, because we understand that having access to digital opportunities is critical for the future of our community. So I'm delighted to be able to moderate this conversation today because we have a lot of expertise and knowledge on this stage today on this particular topic. So I would like to give an opportunity to our panelists to introduce themselves very briefly. So we'll start with Sid Wilson.
Thank you, Diego. And buenas tardes, mi gente. I know it's afternoon, so you've been here for a while, so say it again. Buenas tardes. Thank you. Okay, mi gente está aquí. So, great. My name is Sid Wilson. I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility. We're the nation's leading organization that's been advancing Hispanic inclusion in corporate America for over 38 years. I've been the CEO for the last 10. I look forward to this conversation because in addition to the work that I do as President and CEO of HACER, I also am a commissioner appointee of the President of the United States, Joe Biden, to his White House Commission on Advancing Educational Equity, Excellence, and Economic Opportunity for Hispanics, with some news that took place last week that has a lot to do with workforce advancement for Latinos. So looking forward to a great session.
Thank you so much, Sid.
Thank you for having me. And Antonio, I know he left the room, but he's the inspiration for a lot of the work that we do. So thanks for the kind introduction, and thank you, Diego, for moderating the panel, and you, Anne, and everyone for organizing. So my name is Jimena Gates. I used to be Jimena Herzog, so it's a little confusing sometimes. Not that you care, but I always explain that. I don't know why. I am originally from Chile, came to the US about over 20 years ago. I was in the education world. I was assistant superintendent of schools here in DC. Then I crossed to technology. I am one of they call serial tech entrepreneurs, which I translate into serial tech masochist, because you suffer in one and you keep suffering every time and you wonder, why am I doing this again? But this company is called Build Within, and is technology and services for on-the-job training and official Department of Labor registered apprenticeships. So I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. And Clarissa.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here among so many friends, see so many familiar faces. My name is Clarissa. I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas. After college, I moved here to DC to do a little bit of work for a nonprofit that focused on tech policy, which really helped develop my passion for this issue area. For almost 10 years now, I've been with Google. I've done a variety of different things, had a lot of opportunities to learn. I was originally part of a product that some of you may be familiar with, Google Fiber. It was our sort of foray, the company's foray into becoming an internet service provider. It still exists in some cities, but it was a truly transformational experience for me. I've also done sales, marketing, and most recently, I'm on the public policy team. So it kind of came full circle to my roots. I'm on the civil rights team, which sits within our policy organization. We essentially work across the company internally, marketing, product, philanthropy, to really try and hone our investments in a way that is beneficial to our stakeholders, the civil rights community, in order to maximize that impact. So it's great to be here, and thanks so much to Judan for organizing such a wonderful summit.
Thank you, Clarissa. And I also take the opportunity to thank HTTP for the invitation to be here today, and to all of you for joining this conversation. So I would like to get started with perhaps level setting to begin the conversation about some of the critical changes that the US economy is facing. As you may be aware, first of all, in the last few years, there have been several pieces of federal legislation being passed that basically develop a series of industrial policies incentivizing or providing incentives to specific industries. So, for instance, we have the Inflation Reduction Act, we have the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, we have the CHIPS and Science Act, and all these different pieces of legislation basically put a really great focus on workforce development, understanding that these new industries and these emerging sectors will need a lot of upskilling of the workforce in order to meet the demand. That's one trend that is happening right now, and that we all should bear in mind when thinking about the economic development of our community and overall of the country as a whole. Second one, we all went through the pandemic experience. We all got to see firsthand how the pandemic basically forced us to digitize almost every aspect of our everyday life, right? All of a sudden, we were going through lockdowns, and we had to quickly pivot into digital education opportunities, telework, telehealth. So the need of having not only access to high-speed internet and digital devices, but also the necessary digital skills in order to operate this technology became essential. The other piece I wanted to mention very quickly is that the country is also facing a series of demographic changes. So a stat that we always like to quote in the Aspen Institute Latinos and Society program is that estimations from the Department of Labor found that between 2020 and 2030, there is an estimation of 78% of net new workers being Latino. What does this mean? If you consider the different demographics and who is retiring from the workforce and who is entering the workforce, because Latinos are such a young cohort, you have very few Latinos that are retiring and a lot of Latinos joining the workforce every year. So Latinos are becoming more and more a larger share of new workers, and there will be a need for more investments in making sure that these new workers have access to upskilling opportunities. So this conversation is very essential, not only for the future of our community in particular, but overall for the future of America's economy and its competitiveness. So I would like to get started with Clarissa, since I know that Google has been very proactive around digital upskilling opportunities. There are several programs that you have recently launched in the last couple of years, one of them being Grow with Google. So I would love to hear a bit more about some of these initiatives, what the scope is, and well, I would love to also encourage attendees to explore those resources if they are relevant to them.
Great. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Grow with Google, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's essentially an initiative that lives within our marketing team, which is good because they have the most resources. But it launched, Grow with Google is a program that launched back in 2017. Essentially, I think it's something like 78% of employers in a survey said that they had trouble hiring because of a digital skills gap. And so it was, I think, a very unique and good space for our company to play in and to invest in. We are an internet platform. We have sort of a captive audience in that way, but we aren't necessarily an educational provider. So we partnered with an educational training platform you might all be familiar with, which is Coursera, to launch digital certifications. So anywhere from project management to data analytics to digital marketing, these programs, you can sign up for them on your own via Coursera. They end with a certification. They take about 3 to 6 months to complete. They're completely self-paced. And the goal of this being that to function as a credential for individuals who might not necessarily have gone the college route, or to enhance their degree to become that much more competitive in the marketplace, and to give folks sort of essentially that skill that they can add to their resume to make them more competitive in the job market. For those of you who are wondering, like, is it free? Yes and no. You do need a Coursera subscription to complete them. However, we do have a program via the Grow with Google team called the Google Career Certification Fund. So essentially, for those of you that represent nonprofits or other institutions, you can be eligible for scholarships to go ahead and cover those for your members. So that team partners a lot with national organizations. We've been lucky enough to get some of our partners enrolled into that program, and so that they can essentially offer this opportunity to their members for free. So the certification program, we've seen some great success. I'd say since it's launched, about 250,000 certifications have been awarded. And from the folks that have been able to complete the program, over 60% say that they were able to, it helped them either get a job or get some sort of promotion and upskill their job. So it is obviously the workforce conversation is much more complicated than that, but I think we've seen a great success in this program, and we're hoping that it'll be able to continue.
Thank you, Clarissa. And to underscore the importance of access to digital upskilling programs, there is a report from last year by the National Skills Coalition that basically analyzed hundreds of thousands of job listings in the US and identified that 92% of all jobs in America right now require at least one digital skill. So not having access to digital skills right now can truly become an obstacle for accessing better paid jobs and accessing career opportunities. And underscoring the magnitude of the challenge, there is also a National Skills Coalition report that identified that 37% of Americans had low to no digital skills. And in the case of the Latino community in particular, that number rose to 51%. So there is a critical need of ensuring that not only people have the infrastructure to connectivity, the internet, the computers, the laptops, but also that people understand how to use and operate that technology. I also would like to ask Clarissa, before we move on to Jimena, I know that Google also has tried to prioritize partnerships, understanding that many community organizations bring the cultural responsiveness and the cultural competitiveness, competencies in order to ensure that the offerings are aligned with the needs of the community. So would you like to speak a bit more to that aspect?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I failed to mention that this program is part of just essentially a broader economic opportunity strategy. Skilling is just one piece of this, but we can make the training available online and kind of hope for the best. But we realized that very quickly that in order to really achieve true penetration and scale the program, we were going to need partnerships at all levels. So the Grow with Google team themselves partner with local chambers, libraries, community organizations, nonprofits, national nonprofits like Goodwill. I think they have something like 9,000 partners officially enrolled to help scale this program. When it comes to our team, we did our best to try and make that group of partners as inclusive as possible to make sure that these opportunities were reaching the folks that sort of need it the most, based off some of the statistics that you shared. So we've, over the past few years, thanks to our partners in the philanthropy team, have been able to develop pretty deep partnerships with organizations like Unidos US and the National Urban League and Hispanic Federation to take this training and scale it out to their affiliate memberships. The Unidos created a digital skills for life curriculum and a Latinx and tech curriculum that they scaled out to dozens of affiliates. They were actually one of the first organizations to then translate these trainings to Spanish, that there was a real vacuum when it came to this type of digital skills build training beyond the certifications, basic digital skills learning, and offering that programming in other languages. The National Urban League started another digital skills program. So basically we realized that in addition to just the core curriculum or the certification, there was still this gap, and we would not be able to reach that gap or to fill that gap without partnerships. So we really like to thank many people in this room that have been really critical and to help getting this information out, because without that, really, I don't think we would have the success that we have now. And I would encourage folks, again, if you're not super familiar with the program, I would love to share more information, because as you know from the previous panels, this is an issue that is still not resolved and potentially could only worsen. So we want to be a part of the solution going forward and not part of adding to that gap.
Thank you, Clarissa, for that. And now I would like to move to Jimena as we discuss the overall ecosystem of upskilling, because there are different players in the ecosystem that play a critical role. We, of course, have the 4-year degree institutions, the colleges, but more and more employers play a critical role in upskilling their workforce. And there are several cases of on-the-job training that have proved very successful, one of them being registered apprenticeships. And I know that this is the bread and butter of Build Within, the company you created. So would you like to share a bit more with the audience about registered apprenticeships and why they are so instrumental?
Yeah, so on-the-job training is almost the opposite of actually going to school. And we spend at least 12 years in a school, and then we go to the workplace, sometimes 16, sometimes 18 years if you have a master's degree, and you never really touched the environment where you're going to apply all that knowledge. So on-the-job training, sometimes all it does is compensate for the lack of practice that we get in the education system, whether you have a college degree or not. And so there are different types of on-the-job training, and they all happen in the workplace. So they're all run by employers. Sometimes in partnership with the school systems or with workforce development boards or associations, anybody, but the main characteristic is that on-the-job training means working. There's several types. The most known one is an internship and a structure. We all have had an intern or been an intern. We know what that is. And then it gets more structure and more structure from a pre-apprenticeship, which is sometime in the school, sometime at work. So sometimes these are happening in the high school system, or they happen when you are in college and you may go to work once a week, but you get credit for the time that you're working, and it's very structured. Pre-apprenticeships are a structured internship with specific things that have to happen. And then the registered apprenticeship is the most structured type of on-the-job training. Very, very common in Europe. Germany is one of the countries that lead the apprenticeship movement. In Switzerland, 2/3 of the population have been an apprentice and not necessarily a college graduate before working. One of the former presidents was an apprentice. That means that around middle school, they chose the path of not just studying, but actually learning a trade or learning some kind of profession. In the States, it's been really slow. and we can talk a little bit more about later, but the registered apprenticeship program is a category under the Department of Labor. So a lot of people think, oh, an apprenticeship is an intern. Well, it's not. It's an employee. It's full-time with benefits, normally full-time for 1 year. It's very known in the trades. Started in 1937. Is a legislation about it. It's being is very regulated and governed by the Department of Labor, but is by research the most effective on-the-job training program that exists and an alternative to college for many professions. But so in a nutshell, that's what it is. And then if you go on apprenticeships.gov, you can learn a lot about it. It's normally called a RAP, Registered Apprenticeship Program, and most employers don't know about it, unfortunately.
Thank you, Jimena. So we were mentioning before some of the new federal legislation pieces that were passed by Congress that basically allocate funding for example, registered apprenticeships in the fields of the green energy or infrastructure and construction or semiconductors. So I'm curious to hear more about to what extent you're seeing companies leveraging these emerging opportunities and what is the role that Build Within is having in supporting employers implementing these apprenticeships?
Thank you for the question. So Build Within is a Department of Labor intermediary. So a lot of employers, when they think of an apprenticeship, if they don't know about it, they just think it's an internship. If they know a little bit about it, they remember that it's paperwork to be done, that you have to get approved by the Department of Labor, sometimes also locally, that those approvals may take months, in some cases years. It's a lot. Some of that is correct. Some of it is more that experience that people have had. It's different state by state. We see that with a lot of things like data privacy or any other policy. For the policy gurus in the room, we know sometimes you have to navigate this. So Build Within is the Department of Labor intermediary, meaning we are approved federally for over 30 roles in all professional alternatives to college. So green energy, medical tech, teacher apprenticeships, software development, UX, UI, you name it. And being that we help employers bypass some of that, the paperwork and the data compliance, et cetera, that is involved in an apprenticeship, because there are some elements that have to be in compliance. So employers are getting more and more educated, and these forums help because it's very advantageous for a company to have apprentices. They tend to be excellent workers. The retention is much longer than the typical employee. There is research that says that in some of most big tech companies, the retention is being as low as a year. You spend so much time recruiting and ramping. And for apprentices, the average minimum is 5. So there are savings on all ends. The CHIPS Act is about to deploy $89 billion by the end of the year in funding for all of the entities that are creating factories or expanding factories for semiconductor production. 15% of that funding has to be used in workforce development through RAPs, through registered apprenticeships. The same is with the Build Back Better, infrastructure bill, etc. First hire, first source laws everywhere. If you have a contract of $300,000 as a company, you have to hire local residents. Most states said it's okay if you hire an apprentice. So lots of opportunity. We just have to expand spread the word about it because Latinos are one of the highest beneficiaries because most of the people that come into tech through, that are not the traditional worker are people of color.
Thank you for that, Jimena. And now I would like to shift the focus a bit. We were discussing the importance of ensuring that our community has access to better paid jobs, upskilling opportunities in order to access those. But it's also important to discuss the role that our community can play in corporate boards, in C-suite level leadership roles, because in the case of the tech industry in particular, it's not only important to be part of the teams developing the technologies, but also part of the decision-making table that decides what products are being developed and what products are not. Because otherwise, we are risking those services and those products not being aligned with the needs and expectations of our community. So here we have an amazing expert on these topics in Sid Wilson. Sid, recently the Alliance for Board Diversity and Deloitte produced a report that identified that approximately 4.7% of Fortune 500 board seats are held by Hispanics, and only 1.2% of Fortune 500 board seats by Hispanic women. So considering that Latinos are almost 1 out of 5 Americans, this is, of course, a very low number. And I know that ACER is working really hard in order to improve those numbers. So I would love to hear more about the efforts that ACER is implementing in order to support companies to improve these numbers. And also, your assessment of the current level of inclusion of Latinos in boards in the tech industry in particular.
Well, thanks, Diego. So let me first lay the foundation as I answer the question about the lack of Latinos on boards. Is that, while we're very excited and so many initiatives and so many organizations that are working hard to support the pipeline for Latinos to go into all the various different opportunities of technology, at ACER, the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility, what we are doing is we're working with companies to get ready for you, to get ready for us, because we want to be sure that as we start to increase the number of Latinos, not only in technology roles or any STEM-related roles, or quite frankly, any other roles, because the reality is if you are a company in general, you are a technology company, because you cannot survive. I mean, look what just happened last Friday when one technology company did something and had an impact on all of us, regardless of whether we're technology or not. If you're an airline, you're a technology company. If you're an asphalt company, you're a technology company. If you are a paper mill company, you're a technology company. And so I share that because when you look at the fact that we are not only the fastest growing part of the US economy, we're 20% of the economy, we're $3.2 trillion of Latino GDP according to Latino Donor Collaborative. That makes us the 5th largest economy in the whole wide world, not just the US, the world, with Latinas probably being around the 11th or 12th largest economy in the world. And so when we talk to companies about not only how it's important that we're supporting Latinos into these workforces, but also recognizing that as technology evolves, to make sure that they're supporting our evolution into that evolving economy. And it also goes into how do we make sure that we're supporting Hispanic serving institutions to teach to the jobs of tomorrow and not teaching to the jobs of yesterday, because I don't know anyone that wants to learn how to be a VHS producing technologist on this. If you are, good luck. There's only one Blockbuster Video left in the whole country. So you can see that we have to start thinking about these for tomorrow. But the biggest challenge, Diego, is that a lot of companies will focus on skill set. They'll focus on qualification. They're saying, we need more qualified candidates. We need more qualified candidates. The challenge is that in today's current environment, it goes like this. If you show me your resume, I'll show you a mid-level manager job. If you show me your sponsorship, I'll show you the C-suite. If you show me your credibility, I'll show you a board seat. And so what we have been doing is advocating to companies that, number one, you have no problem finding qualified Latinos into these roles. I was actually reading a book by the former CEO of IBM who was mentioning that in 2011, when they were where unemployment was actually still relatively high, they still had a hard time filling positions. But then what they did, which I know Google does this, and by the way, shout out to Sundar Pichai, who's a good friend of mine. He's been very deeply involved as well as Melanie Parker, your Chief Diversity Officer at Google, and of course everyone on this panel for this and Aspen. And so this is an area that we know we have to be at the forefront because we know because technology evolves, it's why it's so important that we need to not only make sure that we're filling those positions, but making sure that the sponsorship goes up into those higher roles, into those areas of the C-suite, and then making sure that we look at how can we get more Latinos on boards. Again, a shout out to Google. Marty Chavez is on your board of directors, who is a very highly accomplished leader at Google and parent company Alphabet, and certainly looking at Aspen. And I think that what we see here, certainly with HTTP, is why it's so important that we continue to elevate this. So what we have been saying is that corporate America needs to, and I'm going to sort of paraphrase this from a technological standpoint, they have to technologically acculturate to us, not ask us to assimilate into an existing corporate structure of yesterday, when we know that technology is looking ahead towards tomorrow. And once we do that, then we can start truly unleashing the true business case for the inclusion of Latinos in all areas of technology and moving up into all areas within corporate so that we can have more than one Latina as a chief executive officer. We can have more than 5% of board seats held by Latinos, 1.1% only held by Latinas. So all those things that we will need to do together. But that's why together, juntos podemos.
Thank you so much, Sid. And I would also like to follow up with another question. So in your experience, what are some of the best practices that companies have adopted that work well in order to align with the culture and be more appealing to our community when developing workforce opportunities, but also leadership opportunities?
So the first part is understanding that when you look at our demographics, let's just look at some examples. The average age for Latinos, the median age for Latinos is 29. The median age for white Caucasian is 44. In fact, the mode age for white men today is 58. And so that means that corporate America must, in order to think about the opportunities for technology in all these areas in the future, need to lean in terms of their hiring, promoting, and also creating that culture. Because the challenge that happens is, and this is particularly the case in technology companies, is that often when someone leaves a company, they don't leave the company, they leave their boss. And so that's why everybody, whether you're a white man or a Latino or African American or anyone else, all has to lean into diversity, equity, inclusion, and intentionality. We call it DEI squared. Diverse, because you could have 10,000 diversity times 10 million times of equity times 10 quadrillion of inclusion, but if your intentionality is 0, we're all mathematicians here. What is anything times 0? 0. And so that's why you have to have diversity, equity, and inclusion, and intentionality. And when you look at that, where you have that intentionality, I'm going to sponsor, I'm going to put more Latinos on boards. I'm going to make sure that we have a culture that is inclusive for Latinos. Then you're going to start seeing a significant difference. And those are some things that we'll do, particularly since in this, in this current environment where everyone seems to think that DEI is this, and so, but the reality is that we're standing strong with diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you, Sid. I'd like to get back to Clarissa now, since we were discussing the importance of inclusion in the workspace, in the workplace. We know that Google joined the race around generative AI recently. not recently, you have been for several years developing the technology, but you launched Gemini at the end of last year, competing with OpenAI, with ChatGPT, with Microsoft Copilot, and other platforms that are offering a similar service. And I'm going to quote a stat of the Latino workforce report launched earlier this year by Hispanic Heritage Foundation, by Caper Center, CHCI, and Somos VC, where they identify that as of now, Latinos represent 6% of the technical workforce in the tech industry. So, as we said before, Latinos representing almost 20% of the workforce, but only 6% of the workforce in tech. So the question to Clarissa here is, we know that unfortunately in the tech industry, often there has been algorithmic biases in some of the products that resulted as a consequence of not having diverse teams developing the products. So in the case of Google, how is your company addressing those challenges, and what role does diversity play in your strategy?
So I'm glad you're BFFs with Sundar. I'm not. maybe one day.
It's cool.
Yeah, and we are excited to have Marty Chavez. And I will say that as much as I appreciate the kudos, I think I know we can be doing much better. There are currently no Latina direct reports, to our CEO, no Latinos on the board. And it is, a goal, a dream one day to work for a company that has that representation. I think it's important for not only as an employee, but for our community. So I think it's the pressure and the accountability and the work that you do, I think is super important to help keep going. So back to your question, I'm not an AI expert yet, trying to get there, but and it's a little complex, but I guess I'll start. I want to tie it back to the sessions you heard earlier today. So there is a digital divide. The internet, we under-adopt as a community. We speak for myself as a Latina, technically under-adopt. So when you look at how these models are trained, how does Gemini, which is our ChatGPT equivalent, how do our products even know what to do? They're trained. They're trained by data scientists on many times publicly available data from the internet. So when you think about who uses the internet, who is an over-adopter, that data, that user data is very much dictated the voice and the information of these, I'd say, earlier iterations of this model, because they're constantly being updated, they're constantly being trained, they're constantly being revised. So what they, it just started now, and you use Gemini, and it's really incredible, I would say, in terms of like the level of sophistication and detail and speed. But a lot of that has to do with us as users. There is no way these models would exist if it hadn't been for the data that we've sort of created and our intelligence. So, but like many other things in life and in the world, there is bias. So back in 2018, Google, before we entered, I guess, this official AI race, developed AI principles. So we were one of the first companies to release AI principles that help guide any and all AI products, including products like Gemini. They include things like a commitment to scientific excellence, and I'd say the second principle is avoiding bias and doing what we can to reduce bias and eliminate bias in our models. So how do we do that? I'll speak to the ways that I am aware of, but I think it's a more exhaustive list. So in addition to the AI principles, which are like very clear about addressing bias in these models, we also work with partners. So there are research teams that kind of work with experts across all industries, law, technology, social justice. And so we're constantly, testing, iterating, and getting that feedback and implementing that information back into our models. There's a partnership that was just launched with Howard University, for example, to help sharpen an African-American speech data set and to create a framework for what that looks like to pull in other languages and other forms of speech. So that's sort of the second way. And thirdly, my team last year, the civil rights team in the company, released, we worked internally with internal legal teams and also outside counsel to release essentially a civil rights review, an audit of our company and our products, our people across 5 different areas. This report is publicly available. AI is one of the topic areas, also included things like workforce and governance. And so there are some recommendations there about how our company, like, I think we're on the right path. I think the principles are a really good step, but it's an encouragement to continue and act as an additional framework for these models and this work as we continue to invest. There are also, as the products do launch, they come with their own also privacy statements and terms of use. For example, not including topics that will incite violence, right? Making sure that we are not, that things are not available that harm children. So these are this functions at the core. And so I'll say that. And so it is, don't think that they're perfect mechanisms, but I can stand on the fact that this sort of principled approach is what guides and helps address some of that bias. And it's not perfect, but these models are constantly reiterating. So it is important. I'd say, to tie it back, it is important. The more people that use these, especially the folks in this room and the people that you work with, our voice is important. It's important as not only as a product user, not only as an employee, and not only as a leader of a company. I think, as users, it is important to get this information out. The last thing I'll say is that, this past year we've hosted a series of roundtables with some of the affiliates and grantees of the workforce investments that we've made. And AI comes up, and I've been very intrigued and pleased and surprised that from the practitioners who work with communities, they were like first adopters of these models. Like, they were using ChatGPT and Gemini before I decided to use it. And one of the pieces of feedback we've gotten consistently is that it's actually helped their users, which are primarily women, some non-English speakers, older, not college age or younger, sort of like leapfrog over some of those early digital skills where they were sort of getting stuck. So, for example, instead of needing to learn Microsoft Word, and which can be challenging, I've tried to train my parents and others around me, and then I've also taken them to other practitioners because it was difficult. Now to be able to say, tell this model that you want a flyer for your business. Ask this model to plan a trip for you. And to have it be produced instantly, I think has removed so much anxiety and also created so much excitement about them saying, yes, oh my God, this is what I had in my head, but I couldn't communicate it. I didn't have the skills. Doing this, producing this artifact would have taken me hours of time and dedication. So I think there's potential there. It's been a very good use case for me to witness and to hear about. And again, I think that is also important to take back internally to sort of address the core of your question.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Clarissa. I know we are running out of time. So in order to close out, I would like to ask, in just one sentence, what is the main takeaway you would like the audience to walk out with today?
If anyone asks you, what does DEI stand for? You answer loudly, did earn it. So, don't let anyone tell you about, qualifications and all that stuff, and ignore the noise that's going out there. We have a job to do for those of us that are in DC involved with this. But I have to just say that that we have an opportunity to use digital technology to advance our community in just so many ways, from a civil rights and social justice and economic empowerment way. But it's going to take every single one of us to be able to do that. And just know that the Hasera is a partner. A big thanks to HTTP and their leadership, and certainly Judan and the board, and so many that have been advocating to make sure that we have that voice. But we're going to keep making that difference. And again, don't let anyone tell you how to be Latino. I'm a proud Dominican American, Afro-Latino. I'm the first Afro-Latino CEO in the country, and Marco Davis and I are still two. We're going to continue to advocate on this. But again, don't let anyone tell you how to be Latino. So when you're in those technology things, you keep doing what you got to do.
Well said, Sid. Thank you for your leadership. Jimena.
So I encourage the parents here to really explore on the job training opportunities and options. A lot of times we push our kids for college careers, and not most jobs in software development today do not require a college degree. In fact, with AI now, most many, like 70% of the Y Combinator companies were dropouts, I believe, or they're all AI companies, many of them who drop out from college because this is opportunity to actually learn on the job. There's no better experience than actually working. So getting high schoolers into practice, whatever they're needing, and exploring careers. I have a 5-year-old. Exploration is key. And then I think I really encourage everyone to learn about registered apprenticeships because it's a very nuanced and misunderstood methodology for on-the-job training that is going to continue growing in the country. It's embraced by both since, for whoever wins the presidency is going to embrace them because they had in the past, there are a lot of dollars that have been deployed for it. And I think there is a tremendous opportunity for all the organizations that are not involved with apprenticeships to do it. If you want to learn more about it, buildwithin.com or email me at x@buildwithin.com. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jimena. And Clarissa.
And I'll make one more plug for training. In addition to the sort of suite of certifications I mentioned, we just launched an AI Essentials training. I'm in the process of completing it myself. So this is sort of the high level, what is an LLM, what is AI, how does it work? It's not technical training, but it is available as part of our Google certification program. And we also have an AI training for small businesses. So we didn't really get into that, but there is a separate set of free trainings available via our digital coaches program for small businesses. I think it's like Latinos are 1.5 more times likely to start a small business. So those resources do exist and through partnerships with local chambers. But AI Essentials, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Clarissa. Well, we are at time. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you for your attention. Just like the last bit, a little bit of an advertisement. If you're interested in these topics, we have several reports in our website, aspenlatinos.org. We welcome you to check our reports. They are completely accessible for free. So thank you once again. Thank you to our amazing panelists for sharing their wealth of knowledge with us. And thank you, HTTP, for hosting this important conversation. Have a good day.